important. It helps us to see things not just for how they are and how things have always been, but really it sees things for how things could be. Some people give dreamers a lot of flack because they think they just live up in the clouds all day. But really, dreamers understand that that's how we have the really good view of things. Instead of having the ant's eye view, dreamers are the ones that climb high to get the eagle's eye view. And yet one of the benefits of being a dreamer can also be a drawback if we're not careful. Because what's the point of seeing the big picture of things if we're not able to identify and articulate the details to turn a dream into a goal, or perhaps a series of goals, and then to turn that into reality? And that magic something, again, is gaining clarity. It's engaging this topic. My biggest dream was to one day become a magician. And as you can tell, I'm doing that today. But it was an unlikely dream for me because I was an incredibly shy kid. I was nervous even to talk to my own family. But then again, who isn't a little afraid of their family? But once I realized that I had an interest and a talent in magic, all of a sudden I became interested in learning how to talk to people and get along with others because it was a skill that touched this interest that I had. In a book that I recently published, it's called Are You Positive? Rethinking Positive Thinking. I lay out an 8-step process for thinking, being, and staying positive. And in one of those steps, it's called stimulate your passions. Stimulate your passions. Experts say, whoever those experts are, they say that we should focus on our passions, on the things that we do well, the things that we're interested in, because it helps us to stay more engaged. There is actually some research behind this. There was a Gallup study that showed that it's 68% of the workforce becomes most engaged when they're encouraged to focus in the areas of their passions. Again, the things that they do well, the things that they're interested in. And this is important because a separate study found that roughly only 30% of the workforce is actually engaged at all. And yet magically, when they're encouraged to focus on their strengths, they magically, bippity-boppity-boo, they become engaged. Now, I'm not a social scientist, I'm a magician. But I do see a correlation between the two. If we're lacking engagement, if we're lacking interest, focusing on our passions are going to get us to turn up our burners just a little bit more. Welcome. You're welcome. So let's try this. Let's twist my ankle. Yes, exactly. There was a book that was also published recently. It's called High Performance Habits. And in that book, it talks about how someone who achieves high performance in any area, it's going to be by diving into areas that aren't just your interests, aren't just your passions, but it's going to be things outside of your passions as well. To get engaged, we have to start with our passions, our interests, and our talents. But to go even further, we have to dive into areas that lie beyond those interests. For example, a Super Bowl winning quarterback doesn't just know how to throw a ball. A Super Bowl winning quarterback is someone who has to master mental toughness. They have to master brand building and nutrition. A high performer in any area doesn't just focus on what they do well, but they dive into other areas that they aren't naturally interested in. So someone who knows how to throw a ball and someone who can celebrate the success of a Super Bowl win is someone who comes down out of the clouds, identifies the details that they need to turn that dream into reality. And that's what it's all about. So let's try this together, all together. You're going to turn to someone next to you. Now here's the thing, if you turn to someone and they turn to the person on the other side of you, what then? Well, here's what you do. You turn to the person on the other side of you. But what if that person turns to someone on the other side of them too? Well, here's what you do. You're going to play with them. We're making groups of 2 or groups of 3. If you do in groups of 4, it'll work too, but it'll be a little messy. I'm going to give you folks 3 minutes. And you're going to talk about whatever it is you're focusing on today, whatever burner it is, whether it's family, something at home, something with your friends, something with your health, something with your work. You're going to share as much as you're willing to share about how you can stimulate your passions in this area to gain more clarity of what your next step is going to be to turn up that burner a little bit more. I'll give us 3 seconds on the clock starting now. What I like about this exercise is that whether you're sitting next to people that you work with every day, or maybe you're sitting at a table with people that you don't see every day, whatever the case may be, this is the type of stuff that we don't generally talk about on an everyday basis. So it gives us an opportunity to step back and gain perspective from what other people are doing, whether through hearing their stories and what they're working on. That can give you insight into what you're working on. But it can also, it's just a great way to get these things out and start thinking about them in a sort of a more rational way. Now, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about today is stuff that perhaps you've heard before. And it's often said that knowledge is power, but that's only partially true. Knowledge is potential power. But the power really comes from what do we do with this information that we already know? What do we do with this new information that we've been given? I found that there's a number of what I call stumbling stones that sort of hold us back from jumping into action. Because now we all know that there's some sort of area in our life, there's a burner that's not burning so bright. We've stimulated our passions a little bit. In fact, I was talking to Derek earlier. Derek over this table over here. And his burner that he's working on is health. His health burner. He told me I could use him as a case study. And he's focusing on his health. Specifically, he's focusing on nutrition. So he's very excited about the fajitas. Which will be coming out very shortly. But what are some stumbling stones that could keep us? Well, some people, of course, they settle for average. That was my stumbling stone for years, avoiding the Rubik's Cube. Average people, we get average results. Some people, it's being discouraged by others. Perhaps well-meaning loved ones who try and hold us back for whatever reason. A good question to ask is, what do they benefit from you not succeeding? Another stumbling stone is we're hurt by past disappointment. I know that was a huge one for me. I've been engaged to be married twice, only married once. I had to experience the death of my fiancée and then the divorce of the woman who would become my wife. So I know from personal experience, being discouraged by past disappointments can be very, very hard. So that's the third one. Now the last stumbling stone is just generally just having a lack of confidence, sort of not believing that we're ever going to actually succeed anyway. And that brings us to our second point we're going to talk about today. We've talked about engagement, it gives us clarity. What does encouragement give us? What does empowerment give us? Empowerment gives us the confidence that we need to get into that game. There was a book that was published a number of years ago called Body Magic by John Fisher. He's a magician / researcher, and in the book he created this sort of, it's kind of like a little game, sort of like we did earlier with the Scrabble tiles. It's a game using, in this case, envelopes labeled A and envelopes labeled B. Let's try this together. It's a quick game to show you how easy it is to lose confidence, but also how easy it is to regain confidence. You folks can just take one envelope. Do not open the envelopes just yet. We'll be doing this, I only have about 10 or so envelopes labeled A, and another 10 or so envelopes labeled B. So envelopes A are on this side of the room. Envelopes B will be on the other side of the room. Again, if you have an envelope, do not open it just yet. We're going to play this together. Envelopes for you, and let's get a couple more. So if you have an envelope, you're going to open the envelope so you don't look at the On one side, you're going to find numbers. So there's 3 cards. Each card is labeled 1, 2, or 3. You're not going to look at the words just yet. You're just going to take it out so you can look at the numbers. And specifically, we're going to focus on the card labeled number 1. Again, do not look at the words just yet. Just take out the card labeled 1, keeping the number facing you. Now, in a moment, you're going to turn these cards over, and when you turn them over, you're going to find a simple word. And you're, just like with the Scrabble tiles, you're going to, in your mind, rearrange these letters to form a new word. And once you have formed a new word with your card, you're going to raise your hand. You're not going to say anything out loud. You'll just raise your hand so I can see how many of you were able to solve it. So again, we have envelopes A over here and group B over here. If you have the envelope, you may take out card number 1 and turn over your card now and solve this anagram. As soon as you have it, raise your hand up high and keep it up. We have 1 over here. Anyone else? We have 2. We have 3 and 4. No one from group B. Oh, okay, B has 1. Okay. So most people, or several of you in group A have it. Let's call on one person from group A. What do you have? What's your word? Bat, and what was the new word you formed? Tab. Bat and tab. Everyone in group A, you were able to get that? Group B, what was your word? What's your new word? Whirl. Very nice job, Group B. All right, Group B, I'm going to give you another shot. Take out card number 2. Take out card number 2. Same rule as before. Once you have the new word formed, once you solve the puzzle, raise your hand up high so we can see. You may turn over card number 2 now. All right, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 people in Group A. Anyone in Group B? Not yet. All right, so let's call on someone from Group A. What's your word? Melon. Oh, lemon. Okay, so lemon, you turned it into melon. No one from Group B? You were not able to get this. That's okay, I'll give you one last shot. Take out card number 3. And you may turn the card over now and solve the puzzle. As soon as you have it, raise your hand up high. This one's a little harder. This is a little tough. We have someone in Group A. Okay, 2 people in Group A, 3 in Group A. How's Group B doing? All right, Group A. Okay, I think we have everyone in Group A. Back table. What is the word on the card? It helps if you know the word that's on the card too. Cinerama. And what's the new word that you created with it? What's the new word we created? What is it? American. So with Cinerama, you created the word American. Now, several of you in Group A were able to get that. Give yourselves a big hand. We're able to solve all 3 puzzles. Now, Group B, we had a little trouble. But it had nothing to do with you guys. But it had to do with the cards being stacked against you. The cards were stacked against you. If you folks were in Group A, you would have been able to solve these right away. Now, the first 2 in each pile here, Group A and Group B, they were different words. I think it was lemon and bat in Group A. In Group B, the words were whirl and slapstick. Very hard to solve those puzzles because there's nothing to solve. Swirl and slapstick are impossible anagrams. Now, but the 3rd card in each pile, they were the same. Cinerama and Cinerama. Both groups had the same 3rd card. But notice, everyone in Group A was able to solve it. It took a little bit, but you were able to eventually get it. In Group B, this is how easy it is to lose confidence. Whether you recognize this consciously or subconsciously, you may have noticed that whirl and slapstick are at least very difficult to solve, but again, they were impossible. So at least subconsciously, we get set up into a groove where failure becomes the expectation. That's how easy it is to get into a groove where we lose our confidence. Where just moments ago, if you were put in group A, you would have been able to solve the third one with little to no problem. That's what John Fisher, in this activity, tries to explain. But it also shows how easy it is to build confidence. And it's by getting ourselves out of the groove where failure is expected and get ourselves into the groove where success is expected. Sort of like we did earlier with the card that you chose, the Ace of Hearts, right? We set ourselves up into the groove where success was expected, well, because we created all the cards on one. We set ourselves up, we stacked the deck in our favor. And this is something that I learned the hard way. I mentioned earlier I went on a bicycle ride when I was, this was about 10 years ago. I decided to go across the country on my bicycle. I gave away all of my possessions. I sold my car. I was really committed to going on this bicycle ride. The only problem is, I hadn't been on a bicycle since I was a little kid. So what was I thinking? There was a study done in Wisconsin, at the University of Wisconsin, that showed that people who exhibit greater levels of confidence, these are the people who are willing to take on risks, but they're also able to adapt to their circumstances. And it's these two things that are important working together, because if you have one, but not the other, or you have the other, but not the one, it's just not going to work. I was willing to take on risks to go on this bicycle ride, but I wasn't able to adapt to my circumstances, mostly because I was horribly out of shape. I weighed almost 300 pounds, hadn't been on a bicycle in years, but also it was November. Terrible time of the year to go on a cross-country bicycle ride. Setting ourselves up for success is when we get out of the groove where failure is expected. It puts us in a groove where success is expected by setting us up for some simple, quick wins. Now, when I realized that I couldn't make it to California, I realized there was a gap between where I was and where I wanted to be. It was a gap between what I wanted to do and what I was currently capable of doing. If you've ever traveled by train, you've recognized this same thing. There's this sign that says, "Watch the gap." Have you ever seen this sign at train stations, "Watch the gap"? The idea is that if you don't watch out for this gap between the platform and the train, you're going to fall into the gap, and you'll trip over the gap. You're not going to be able to get onto that train. It's going to take you to where you want to go in life. But what they don't tell us is we should be watching out for these gaps in our everyday lives as well. These gaps that hold us back from getting into the game of whatever it is we're trying to work on. I've listed 17 different gaps that are possible to hold us back. I'm just going to mention 8 of these now. If you're interested in the other ones, there is a resource that is available to all of you. I'll explain at the end how to access that resource so you can look at all 17 of them. But I'm just going to mention 8 of them now. And as I list these off, just listen to see what perhaps is the one that rings true for you. Maybe it's something you faced in the past, or perhaps it's one that you're currently facing. Gap number 1. This is the education gap. This is the one that says, I don't have the proper education to succeed. This is actually kind of an encouraging one, because if you know that there's something that you don't have to succeed, all you have to do is go after it. But that's one gap that we use often as an excuse. Number 2 is the knowledge gap. This is the gap that says, I don't know what I need to do to better my life. This one is a little less encouraging because it says that we don't know what we don't know. But there's a simple way to figure it out. That's what mentors are for, that's what coaches are for, that's what bosses are for, right? Number 3 is the skills gap. This one says, I don't have the right talents and skills to succeed. Number 4 is the mistake gap. I'm afraid of making mistakes. Similar to that is the perfection gap. This one says, I have to already be perfect before I begin. I have lots of friends that this is their gap. They don't want to jump into action until they're perfect. I just want to shake them and say, you won't become perfect until you jump into action. Number 6 is the planning gap. I need to have all the steps laid out before I begin. This is me trying to cook dinner at night. I have to have everything portioned out before I start, but this is impossible because many dishes, you can't portion them out until you've already prepared part of it. So that's my gap. Number 7, the comparison gap. Others are better than I am, so why bother trying? That was one of mine for years. I had an early mentor. I went to see a magic show in New York City. It was a show called Monday Night Magic. And I saw this magician. His name was Levant. Well, actually, it was Levant. I thought it was Levant. I thought it was French. Turns out it was Levant. And he was the whole package. He was technically very skilled. He was hilarious. I walked away from the experience in pain from laughing so hard. And this mentor that I was with, he pulled me aside after the show and he said, Jonas, don't let the great be the enemy of the good. He said, you're good, so don't let the great be the enemy of the good. Now, I took this to heart, and that helped with the comparison gap. Number 8, and this is the last one, this is the belief gap. I don't believe I'll ever have real success. And this is the heart of confidence. This is the heart of empowerment. This is perhaps one of the biggest tragedies of all, is when we just don't believe in ourselves. Again, whether it's through past disappointment, whether it's through getting discouraged by well-meaning loved ones who are trying to hold us back for some reason, whatever the case may be, just having that lack of confidence is perhaps the most tragic of all. So the question becomes, you don't have to answer this out loud, but just for yourself, what does your gap look like? And the next question is, now that we're aware of it, can you get over this gap? And perhaps the better question is, how can you get over this gap? See, the two questions, they sound similar. Can I and how can I are similar, but can I has inherent doubt. It sort of impedes our progress before we even get started. But by asking a different quality of question, how can I? Well, that presumes there is a way, right? And we just have to find that way. What's your name again? What is it? Kelly. Kelly. Nice to see you. Jones. Nice to see you. Kelly, you're going to help us out with a quick demonstration. Kelly, how's your eyesight? Do you have good eyesight? That's perfect. That's exactly what I needed you to say. He's so disappointed right now. Kelly, I'm going to give you this chart. And if you could just tell everyone, just generally, what is this? Eye chart. It is an eye chart. So there's a series of letters. If you could just rattle off all of those letters right now.
TTLSHIWWYAUATWSHIWSTTLSHIWWYA.
Hey, you got a big hand! So we already asked, can you read this? And yes, you can. Very nice job. But now, we're going to have you do it again without looking at it.
Yeah.
Can you do that?
No.
You see, that's what happens when we ask, can I? The answer is always our gut instinct response, no, no, we can't. But if we ask the different quality of question, how can you read this from memory? You're going to go, they're fun. So Kelly, what are some ways that you could read this from memory?
Memorize and live under it.
That's one way. Yeah, if I gave you perhaps maybe 10, 20 minutes, you could probably figure it out. If I gave you a few hours, maybe. But how can we do it instantly? I could just whisper it to him. Kind of like that long-nosed guy in that bush, talking, whispering things. I don't know what it's called. Well, that's one way that it would take a little while. We could phone a friend and I could help you out. But now, in the interest of time, I'm just going to give you folks the answer to this. And I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. How do we learn letters when we're a kid? Repetition. And what is another popular way that we do that with repetition?
The song.
Yes, I heard someone say singing a song, we sing a song, right? That is a very popular way that we learn things, is by repetition, but also making a song out of it. It sort of accesses a different part of our brain. And if we look at this long enough, again, I'm just going to give you the answer. If we look at this long enough, we don't have to turn this into a song, because maybe it already is a song. I don't know what the technical term of this is called, but you know how there's this different songs with different words but the same melody, right? So we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Now that same song has the same melody but different words. You know what that song is? Twinkle, twinkle, little star. You know that song, right?
Yep.
So this is stuff that's already inside of you, right? Now, if you look at this closely, I'm not going to make you sing. No, the singer's over here, right? If we look closely at this, twinkle, twinkle, little star. Can you tell us what's going on here?
It's just the first letters of every word.
Yeah, so the first letter of every word in Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, that's what this eye chart is. So if I ask you to close your eyes, give you a moment, you could rattle this off, just thinking what the words are and giving us the letters. You see how easy it can be? By instead of asking, can I? By taking a step back and asking, how can I? Kelly, you already have it inside of you. Kelly, thank you so much. You did a great job. Big hand for Kelly. Thank you. All right, we've talked about engagement. Engagement gives us what? Clarity. Who said that? We've talked about empowerment. What does empowerment give us? Oh, I heard someone say confidence. Everyone's pointing to each other. Confidence. Engagement and empowerment, clarity and confidence. We have one last thing we're going to talk about, and this is perhaps the most important one of all. Because no matter how much clarity we have, no matter how much confidence we have, no matter how engaged or empowered we are, none of this will matter unless we stay in the game to go the distance and celebrate success. And that's why encouragement, and this is my favorite one. I get excited with encouragement. I'm very much a cheerleader. I like to root people on. In fact, when I'm bowling with friends, I'm cheering for them. I want them to win. I want to help to give them the courage that they need to stay in that game. So let's dive right in with courage. Now, what's important to understand about encouragement and courage is, what do we mean by courage? For our purposes, we're going to call courage creative persistence. And both of these are important, but persistence is perhaps most important, because one of the saddest things in life is when we give up on something too soon. Something becomes difficult, maybe it hurts a little bit, it's harder than we thought it was going to be, so we give up. Now, staying in the game is going to be important, so persistence is going to be necessary. In fact, you probably recognize this. Anything worthwhile in life, it's going to hurt a little bit. It's going to be tough. It's going to test us a little bit. So persistence is important. But the creativity is equally important, because it's often said experience is the best teacher. But that's really only partially true. Because if we just blindly do the same thing over and over and over and over again, that's a recipe for insanity. So it's more the better explanation is that it's a reflective experience. Taking a moment, experiencing something, reflecting on it. What did we learn from this experience, and how can we innovate and be creative as we persist forward, as we move forward? That's where the true power comes from. And sometimes this is also going to ask us to not take life so seriously, just like Kelly did. I made Kelly disappear just now. He's gone. Just like Kelly did a moment ago, sort of taking a step back and figuring out what we can learn from something. I had an experience a number of years ago. I was on tour with a band. I was the band's opening act. If it's for me, I'm not here. It's supposed to be at the library. Thank you. I was on tour with a band. I was there, the opening act, doing my magic act. We went as far north as Burlington, Vermont, as far south as Washington, D.C. And on our way through Pennsylvania, we stopped for a show in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That's going to become important in a moment. And we had just finished unloading all of the band's equipment. And I went back out to the tour van to get my stuff so I could set up for my magic act. But just as I got outside, I became abundantly aware that there were two street thugs lurking about. Everyone go. And I knew they were street thugs because I've watched television. These were just like the ones on TV. They had hoods and everything. So my gut instinct was to retreat back to the safety of the club to wait for these street thugs to scamper off, or whatever it is street thugs do. But then I hesitated, and I hesitated because I don't like thinking ill of people. So I thought to myself, well, I don't actually know that these are street thugs. That's just society. That's just the media telling me something about these two gentlemen that I really know nothing about. So I ignored my fears, and I went out to their tour van. And just as I got to the van, I felt these two strong arms push me up against the van, and they proceeded to mug me. Turns out they were street thugs. I had never been mugged before, so this was all very exciting. I love new experiences. I don't recommend it, but it is exciting. But it all happened quickly. Have any of you ever been mugged before? Yeah, it happens very, very quickly. So before I knew it, they were scampering off with my wallet. Oh, it turns out they do scamper. That's what the street thugs do as they're trying to keep their pants from falling down. For some reason, they like to keep their pants out. It's weird. So I went back into the club just in time to be told it was time to go out onto stage. So I walk out onto stage, and I start off my set by saying, so I was just mugged outside. And everyone thought it was part of the act. I said, no, it's terrible to be here. I don't want to be in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania anymore. I want to go home. And I tell you this whole story because it goes in line with what we're talking about. Experience is not the best teacher, it's reflective experience. And after taking a step back from that experience, I realized that those muggers were actually rather kind to me. As nice as muggers can be. Again, I don't like to think ill of people. I try to find the best in people. But it was all in their words. After they pushed me up against the van, this is what they said. They said, stay cool. Give it up. Did you catch it? Stay cool. Give it up. You see, in order to stay cool, we have to already be cool. So they thought I was a pretty cool guy. So as a gesture of my appreciation, I gave them my wallet. But here's the thing, I didn't know how much to tip. I know the standard is 15%, but they took all my money anyway. But the least I could have done is offered them the PIN numbers to my bank card. It would have been a nice, kind gesture. But again, I tell you this story because it's all about reflective experience. And after reflecting on this experience a bit more, I realized I truly learned something that day in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I now know the true meaning of the name Pittsburgh Steelers. like the football team, because they stole for every one little pity applause. Thank you, sir. Thank you. He'll be singing later in the show. Now, I used to tell that story. It's an absurd joke, but it is a true story. I used to tell that story as part of my act, just as a joke. But one day after my show, someone came up to me, and he pulled me aside, and he told me that he really liked that Pittsburgh Steelers joke. And I always like to know what resonates most with people. So I asked him what it was. And he said that if he had been in that same situation, he wouldn't have been able to find a way to laugh about it. And it got me to thinking that you could take two separate people and put them in the same situation. One person can walk away feeling bitter about the whole thing, but someone else can walk away fascinated by the whole thing. It's all about what we choose to focus on. It's not our experiences so much. Yes, it's important to understand the clarity. It's important to have the confidence to get into the game. But unless we keep moving forward and reflect on our experiences, to always make today better than yesterday and tomorrow better than today, it's by doing this that we'll be able to have the courage to stay the course and keep going. It's really one of my favorite metaphors. It's about the hot water that we can find ourselves in life. Whenever we find ourselves in hot water, there's really only three basic ways that we can respond. We can be a carrot, we can be an egg, or we can be a coffee bean. Who's an egg? Who said that? So a carrot, an egg, or a coffee bean. When a carrot gets into hot water, the carrot becomes soft, it becomes mushy, it loses its strength. When an egg gets in hot water, it becomes hardened. But when a coffee bean gets in hot water, well, it just makes everything around it better. In our own situations, whatever burner it is that we're focusing on today, when you find yourselves in hot water, are you going to give up and lose your strength? Are you going to become hardened and just keep blindly doing the same thing over and over again, going insane? Or are you going to co-create with reality in positive circumstances, regardless of what's going on around you? There was a book published many years ago called Pollyanna that talks about this same sort of idea. And the book became so popular that the name Pollyanna, the title character in the book, that name has become synonymous with the eternal optimist. And so Pollyanna, she introduced something in the book called the glad game. The idea is, no matter what situation we're going through in life, finding something to be glad about it. And I suggest that it's by playing this game that we'll be able to stay the course with whatever it is we're working on. She introduced the game like this. She told how she invented the game. Her father ordered a doll for her. And when the stores sent them the shipment, they didn't send a doll, they sent a pair of crutches. Not exactly a doll. But they sent a little note saying that, well, we ran out of dolls, but little kids will probably need crutches at some point. So here's the crutches instead. Now, Pollyanna, of course, was disappointed by this, but she decided to not be discouraged. She decided to play the glad game. So she tried to find something positive to be glad about this situation. And what she walked away with was she was just glad that she didn't need the crutches. It can be something as simple as appreciating our sound health that we do have, the positive things, just putting another spin on things. What we're going to do now is we're going to play one quick round in your groups of the glad game. You're going to turn to your partner. Hopefully your partners don't run out on you. And you're going to talk about something that's happened, maybe something recently, or something that's currently happening, and find something to be glad about. It's not, if it's a negative situation, it's not saying that it's okay, but it's saying something positive to come out. the recurring theme is expressing gratitude in some way. That's really the heart of the Glad game, is just expressing gratitude for the good things that we do have. This brings us to the end of this presentation. We've talked about engagement, empowerment, encouragement. We've talked about clarity, confidence, and courage. But secretly, I've been keeping a secret from you folks. I said that there's 3 E's. There's really 5. There's engagement, empowerment, and encouragement. But this is all to get us set up to enjoy life and to excel in life. And the reason I didn't really talk about that is because nothing can make us enjoy life, and nothing can really make us excel in life. That's not something me or anyone in your lives can do. That's a personal choice. And we choose to enjoy life, and we choose to focus on the positive things that we have. And we choose to excel in life, and we choose to take what we know and take what we've learned in life, and we choose to jump into action with that today. But before we go, Carol has been holding on to something for the past month. I mailed her the box, mailed her the briefcase, mailed her the envelope. She's been holding on to the last final piece. And Carol, can you please take out what's inside? And can you please open it up and tell us what you see?
Thank you for inviting me here today and for helping make magic happen. We couldn't have done it without you, especially chosen.
Well, just follow along. Make sure that I'm not reading anything that's not there. We couldn't have done it without you, especially if you hadn't chosen the Ace of Hearts. 2 months ago, or last month, I knew you were going to choose the Ace of Hearts. Also, thank you for wearing the stylish black shirt, black jeans with fancy leaves, and the lovely necklace with the circles.
He's a winner!